This is our friend and neighbor, Josh Forsman, fifth generation Eliite. That is so cool. Proud Finnish heritage. Josh is now introduces, we're going to be learning about Xogos Gaming, a forward-thinking educational platform that blends on-screen learning with real-world experiences and emphasizes entrepreneurship and volunteerism. Please excuse me. And joining Josh is going to be the founder of Historical Conquest, Zach Edwards. So I'll leave it to them to keep going, but please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Thank you, Lacey. I appreciate that. So yes, on screen, you can see Zach Edwards, the one who kind of created a lot of this fun. And so I appreciate you all coming out here and checking this out, this new location. I do have on the table here next to me a whole bunch of the different educational games and some flyers too, talking about some of the background of them, because these are all different things from my personal collection and the fun I've had with my kids over the last several decades myself. So we've got certainly a little history piece I've got pulled up, I think, for me and Zach as part of our intro, as we've got this set up here for Xogos. But as far as a fun little tidbit, when I met Zach Edwards, it was because he was running a Kickstarter on Historical Conquest, which is this collectible card game based in real history. And he had fun pointing out to me the idea that he divides the country by the Mississippi. And I don't know about how many of you here realize that there's not many places that are not east or west of the Mississippi, but simply north. So, but early on, I actually went to not just chess nationals, competing from high school, but also have run a number of Catan world tournaments. And I've also done different coaching programs all set up through those particular board games, and even taking Backgammon as a game that's an old one that we're familiar with, where now that game itself is one of those things like Silver Sneakers. It's actually designed for seniors more, and they've got programs set up because it's so mathematical and good for the brain that it's better than any Sudoku or anything like that. And Minnesota is most known for the highest stakes game in clubbing, so to speak, for the backgammon chouette matches, which are multiplayer backgammon matches. And it started at like $2 and went up to like 4,000. And so kind of wild little stories with all little tidbits of board gaming, so to speak, as it's been my world literally since high school. And normally when I travel, I am suited up for fun, and I'm far from the only one, as you can kind of see in this image of my glorious pineapple suit that I'm usually caught in, and that becomes my ID badge as I travel around the country. So I'll give Zach here a little bit of a chance to introduce himself too. So go ahead, Zach.
So can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So interesting enough, everyone, the first time I met Joshua, he was actually wearing that pineapple suit, and I had no clue what to think. So if you can see me right now, this is how I usually dress. I'm very conservative in many ways, much like Joshua is right now. But at the same time, when we're at the booth, I usually do more of the conservative, talking to the families and such. And Joshua is all about fun and being very out there, and it's great to have him there. He's a great addition to what we do, and people seem to love him. And it's really funny because when I come in after he's left, so like a year afterwards, like another convention, a year later, I'll come in and everyone's like, "Where's the hat man?" Because he's always wearing a different hat, whether it's this hat that he's wearing or a Pikachu hat from Pokemon. There's all different hats that he does, so we call him the History Hat Man. And actually, when you see his business card, you'll actually see a little bit more to it. But yes, so I am the CEO of Historical Conquest. I've been doing that ever since 2014. But it actually goes way back. When I was in high school, I actually hated history because of how it was taught. And so when I went to college, my English professor said, create a product that would change the world and write in a one-page essay. So I did that. I wrote a one-page essay, turned it in, I got a great grade. But every single class that I went to, it continued to develop itself until I had a fully functioning game. Well, come to find out, about 4 months after I sent it out to the distributors and they were looking through it, they were reviewing it, they said, "Hey, this is great and all, but we just found out that the History Channel is coming up with their own game." Now that was 2004. They released it around 2005, 2006. By 2008, it was gone. But because they did it, they had their game coming out. my wife wisely told me to put away the game and go get a real job. So that's what I did. So from 2004 until 2014, I was a regular business manager. And then I was teaching kids about entrepreneurism. They wanted to see what I produced. So I brought it out. They got to play it. And then they wanted more. And that was the start of Historical Conquest. And it took off from there. We are now in business for the last 11 years, which for a gaming company is unheard of, except if you get very large in certain ways. But we found a great niche. We work a lot with the public schools and the private schools. Most games focus on gamers. We love gamers, but we go a little bit further because we want to make this a little bit more educational. Now, as Joshua was saying, just to give you a little heads up on Historical Conquest, it's a physical gaming game card that you can play. Basically, it plays like the game of Risk, but where you're playing with cards of actual people from history. So on the cards, you can actually read about the people you're playing with. And what's great about that is just by playing the game, even if you don't want to know anything about history, you learn things about history. And that's how we actually do all of our games. We wanted to make sure that everyone that was playing our games, one, had like 70% fun and 30% education, because the more that they play and they like it, the more that they're going to learn. And so that's how we get kids into this. And in focus grouping, actually one of the big things, I might go on a rant a little bit, sorry, but Joshua and I have these epic rant sessions when we're supposed to be working, and so I apologize. But the one thing with kids is they are completely fine with educational games as long as it's not boring. So they'll play any game you give them as long as it's not boring. And so we took the idea of, well, if we make all of our games 70% fun and only 30% educational, every time they come back, they're going to learn a little bit more. Sorry, I'm going a little bit further than I was hoping, but one thing to know is 2 years ago, we were working with public schools. The public schools, they loved our game, they loved the concept, but for all those ones that we sold to, because it was a paper product, one, it was too expensive for each student to play with. The second thing is, because it was a paper product, it was always getting destroyed. All the kids were sharing it, they were roughhousing with it, and they had to buy new decks. They also didn't like that. And because it was a paper product, the teacher was always the one that had to set it up, take it down, and also tell the kids how to play. And another thing that was a barrier for them. So about 2 years ago, they asked us, do you have a digital solution? And at the time, we were creating digital historical conquest. But they said, well, this is great. We want history, but we want like every subject. And we want it middle school through high school because there's nothing out there for them. There's plenty for elementary school, as you might already know. But we need it for something for the older kids because they don't have anything to do. So that was the whole idea. That's where the beginning of Xogos Gaming came from. It was basically on the idea that we wanted to give students, especially the older students, something that they could play with, something that they could do. Because as you might all know, is that students are always on the screen when they're not at home, or sorry, when they're not at school, and when they're not being managed by parents. Now, that's not all kids. I shouldn't say that. About 90% of students, they go home, they go on YouTube, they go on social media, and they don't do much. So we're going to talk to you about how we've actually changed that for a lot of kids, and we're just beginning. We actually just released this year, and we are just getting out there. Sorry to take away a lot of your, but Joshua, please.
No, go ahead, slide on to the next one, and we can see some of the data that's not just things that are, when you look at this idea of gamification, that's a big part of where I've taught my kids. As you've probably met Toivo and Starla, and even Zoe has learned a lot through, as I talked about, sometimes those games early on in the history of these things, through cooperative learning. But it's just kind of like what Zach was highlighting, this idea of you're actively learning with different incentives, and it's built into the games. This mechanism of games really started in the early 90s, and that's where these shift to these modern board games have really gone. And so that's where my kids who have been raised in this, I'm seeing them excel completely differently. But I also get to see that in a broad sense, as I'm literally sent from coast to coast. I mean, I've been up to Alaska, I'll be in Florida coming up. And so literally traveling the whole country, showcasing this And it's really neat to be able to bring this here. So some of these images you're going to see on the screen are things from our different games we have in Xogos platform. But the idea of creating this personal, safe environment for the kids, so they are engaged and they have this healthy community, but they're still competitive. They can find the cooperative based things. All these different learning styles and mechanisms get built into it. I mean, even taking this idea of one of my favorite games, The Pursuit of Happiness. That's literally a title of a game that's been now reprinted 4 times, but it's all around that idea of decision making and how are you going to spend your time, and it measures it in happiness. Because sometimes that's the whole idea of when we're out doing things and we're getting to our careers, how are we really measuring our happiness? If that's going to be our scale. But finding the right scale for this idea, because we've got to be able to speak the kids' language, or even as adults, be able to get into that. And so that's a big thing of what I've gone on about, is just gamification, what that really looks like. I don't know, did I miss anything on that, Zach, on gamification?
Well, one thing to note is that, and you said it briefly, but the incentives. Kids love incentives. They love to know that something's actually coming from what they're doing. For instance, with education, kids love, let me restate that. Most kids don't get as much enjoyment from school as we as adults would hope that they would. But if all of a sudden that they realize that there's actually something that they're getting out of it, that they're actually going to be able to use, they actually like it. It's also like a soft, okay. It's almost like a soft incentive for them to understand where their education is going. But and we'll show this in just a minute, by actually creating incentives that the kids can actually see, touch, be part of, they're more in tune with going further than they ever would before. And that's what part of gamification, by having different levels, the player wants to keep going. By having incentives, points or such, the player wants to keep going. Having challenges as well. These are all things that students want in order to succeed. But here's one thing that, and Joshua and I were going on this epic rant, I think yesterday or 2 days ago when we were talking, is the incentivized, the gamification even business has these days. Businesses are starting to find ways of gamifying their experience, where the person that comes and is part of their business is actually getting to be like challenged, finding incentives of doing more than just a one-time visit or such. And so these are all things that are embedded in us, and we've just used them to help kids to want to learn more. So, and that's what brings us to Xogos. So, can I tell?
Yes, this is our online platform that has our whole mix of games that Zach was kind of addressing earlier. And just a little bit of the history of, like, Zach, where do you even come up with the name Xogos again?
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask if I could share that. So Xogos is actually in Castilian, it means it's games. So it's games basically squared. So Xogos was just an interesting way of saying games that kids would be able to latch onto, much like Google. And I'm sorry, nobody knew what Google was until a few years ago. And my kids came up to me and said, "Hey, Dad, can I have a Google of something?" And I was like, "What in the world are you talking about?" I had never heard the word before, and yet it actually had a meaning. So yeah, Xogos is one of those words that looks fun, and yet it's basically just saying games. Okay, so the one thing that to know is that Xogos is the new wave of educational technology. I don't know if you know this, but like in the investment world, in a lot of funding, education is not what we call sexy. It's not something that people really want to invest in and be part of. We're actually bringing the sexiness factor into it, and it's not in the sense that the terminology that we use, but in the terminology that it is actually interesting and exciting for people to be part of. Education is not something that people usually invest in. It's not something that people get excited about. I'll tell you one thing. Okay, so not to go on another rant, but as a divorcee, when I was out dating, I'd say I was a game designer, and the first thing that person would say, "Oh, that's nice," and yeah, it didn't last that long. But when we make education more attractive to investors and to people to get into that industry, the better we're going to have for all of our children. And that's the thing. The future is what's involved in everything that we do with this system. And the reason that we're trying so hard to get this up and running and out there is because one, it will affect every single child. It will help every single child in the United States and potentially even the world. And so that's a big thing to say, but we're going to prove it to you. We're going to show you a little bit more about it.
So here's some of the statistics that we have certainly walked through and seen. As you can kind of see, this idea of just, kids that aren't interested, that they fall behind because of the scores. And as you look at those charts, that's the idea of where we're taking this idea of disengagement and what, sometimes the teachers who have seen and worked with can't afford half the material. And we've seen that even in our own school district, that the fundraisers they try to have and get them sort of thing. And that's the idea of having a simple program like this. So everything is built in as a single idea. So they're at one site, everything is also protected. Because of this idea of working with kids, we make sure the security and everything is there. And I mean, even my own kids that get on to different video games, they're drawn to the colors, the flash and all that. And we're sucked into that. And that's the world we live in. So either we can fight it or we embrace it. And that's a big part of what Xogos is trying to do, is embrace that whole idea and do it well. And that's where this has spent years in the process of actually vetting this. And my kids have given a lot of input, even to Zach at times, going, hey, what about this? What about this? And he goes, oh, yeah. And he has his own herd of children as well. I'm sure that helped him. I miss some of those stories, but.
Well, as Joshua was saying, all these different things are happening to our children. So this is, I always blame ourselves. So as adults in different industries, we make videos that are epic, that they have great colors, special effects, all these great things that kids want to see. And as they're growing up, they can do the cutesy near the elementary school age. But if you look at some of those children, it's getting younger and younger when they're actually getting more interested in the less cutesy and the more epic, the more colors, the more special effects. Now, we've actually seen with things like with Minecraft or such, there's pixelized epicness as well. And so that brings down a little bit of the factor. But as adults throughout the United States, we've actually created all these things so kids want to be entertained. They want to see great pictures. So when a student opens up his history book and he sees black and white, really boring images, it does not attract him. It does not give him a reason to want to be part of there. And so that's one of the reasons why they're less interested, disengaged, and because of that, discouraged. And I don't know if you've heard the news. It was probably about 6 months ago. It's called NAEP, N-A-E-P. It's the National Association for Educational Progress, something like that. They do a report card every year. And we are at the lowest level in many of the subjects since they started in 1982. And I remember that date because it's actually when I was born.
Well, all right. So we can see on the next slide here, as Zach was kind of keying on that, that is where we've created this Xogos platform.
Yep.
We've created this idea of this proprietary games. We've created this idea of a social platform that is monitored by just parents and teachers. We've developed our own AI that does that real-time analysis. So on the back end, the teachers, the parents can actually look and see what questions the kids are getting right, where they're spending their time, where those hours are logged, and it's on the back end. The parents can choose however they want to do that. But it's like some of these other platforms, you see all the stuff in there. And then we have the iPlay coins. So Zach, what can you tell them about the iPlay coins?
If I could just jump back one little bit, what you were talking about. I can't see the crowd, but how many of you have heard of Roblox? Okay, so if you've heard of Roblox, it's a
one.
Game.
We got one.
Okay. I was up in Fairbanks, Alaska last week. And every single parent that I asked to, you probably had like a 50-50 split. Some have heard of it, some have not. Every child had heard of it. And most of those, probably 90% of them, were all playing it or had played it at some point. They all knew about it. Well, there's a lot of issues with programs like that. One, they play with adults and they talk with adults, and you don't know if the adults are saying that they're teenagers and they're actually adults. There's a lot of issues with it. There's another part that's really questionable to a lot of parents, and that's the fact that they monetize their kids. So, like Joshua was saying, they have something called Robux, and you have to spend actual money to do that. Well, what the teachers actually told us when we were focus grouping with them is that they did not want us to monetize their kids. No advertisements, no buying things with US dollar. When we focus group the students, come to find out they did not like that system of buying their coins. One, they don't have that much money, and when competing against adults, it's the adults that have the money to buy all the power-ups. And how do you compete against someone that has all these power-ups when you don't have that much money, if any? And so in our system, you actually earn them. So you earn them through gameplay, playing educational games, certain ones, and then you can also earn them by doing well in school. And then here's a notable thing, especially because we are a tech company. We're the only tech company that actually wants to get your kids off the screen. So we actually incentivize them to get off the screen. Now, some people say, well, great, if I get off the screen, I'm not on there, I get points, so I go to another screen. I'm like, no, wait. We have actual programs to help them actually do things that are valuable to them. And this actually comes from the idea that most kids have never experienced going out volunteering. Most kids have no incentive to go out and do any physical work. They're having less and less activity as we get more recent years. And so one of the big things we have is the first program that we have. Actually, well, we'll get to it.
Well, so look at this idea of, I like where you're going, Zach, but we have basically screen pollution. You know, you think of that idea of how much time we as adults are spending looking at our Facebook, looking at this idea of YouTube, and just this idea of where we're spending all that time, and it becomes pollution to our brain. It becomes pollution really in that idea. As much as we could get good out of all that data, how much are we really applying every resource that we have, all of that access we have, and the kids are what watches us. They're the ones that, I mean, my son will pull up my phone and go, oh, how much time did you spend on this tab? How much? I'm like, well, it's nice that you know how to do that, but I feel a little guilty all of a sudden. And it turns into, yeah, self-conscious, but I don't mind that. Not every parent obviously has that same level of comfort with their kids and that idea. But I want to make sure I'm leading that example with my kids. And so that's kind of the neat thing, is trying to get away from this general screen pollution, show them with this one particular part of Xogos, the I serve. Well, so this is literally an app. Oh, what?
Well, I was going to say, we can go back to the other one, but let's do I serve first. I think you're on the right path.
Yep. So I serve is an app part built into Xogos. So this is designed to work with nonprofits, other organizations. So basically we can set up the events, and as the kids participate in this app, they are logging things to actually get those coins. They are actually getting that off-screen program all set up, so that way a nonprofit can sign up. We can actually participate with them, and we're going to basically create a profile for every single child, every single student that actually participates in that, and they're going to get credit that they will be able to cash out for the Xogos Gaming. They're going to be able to use that, you know, and that way you can actually send any sort of teacher can say, hey, look, we're going to track this for you, and it becomes gamifying volunteer work.
Yeah, so the basic idea is, as a nonprofit organization, we have right now about 30 on our list. Well, actually, let me go a little bit further. This is actually all thanks to UMKC, so the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and also the state of Missouri as well. They have given us funding to create this program that will be finished around, I think the date now is June 23rd. Now, with that date, this is when the program will be available. What a nonprofit does is they actually register with our system, basically explaining who they are. They get vetted by us. Everything that happens in our system has to be vetted because, again, we're working with kids. So the nonprofit registers, then they sign on, and they can actually schedule service projects in their area. So if there's a road cleanup, great. We have the City of Liberty Parks and Rec, who have like 5 different groups in there. They have the senior citizen home that we're going to be working with, and this is all during the summer when we're actually testing it out. In Liberty, we also have the food bank that's attached to it. We have Park and Rec has the cleanups. So it's not just cleanups, it's like all of these different programs that you can do that these students can do. Now the students then go from the games, they can log into the iServe system, which is basically just clicking on a button and being sent into the system, and they can see all the service projects in their area that are ready to go for them. And it gives the description, it gives the dates, they click on it, they register, and they're ready to go. On the day, actually, and before that, when they do register, it sends an email to their parents to make sure that their parents know what they're signing up for, in case there's a conflict, or maybe they're grounded and they can't do that. I don't know. But so here they go out to the service project. They serve for an hour, 2 hours. The nonprofit actually clocks them in. They clock them out. By the time the kids get back to their screens, they have coins on their screens. So this is the great thing about this system, is we incentivize kids to go out and volunteer. Now, interesting enough, a lot of there's actually, I expected there'd be a lot of people that would ask me, well, I don't want to incentivize my kids to have to go out and serve. But here's the thing, a lot of these kids will never have the opportunity to go out and serve because they've never experienced that. It's when they start serving that they actually feel the desire to do it. There's some things that actually come out of it, and we're going to be doing some studies on this through UMKC of the mental health of the student. How much does it actually increase the more that they serve others? There's a lot of different quotes I can go through, from Mahatma Gandhi to Martin Luther King. All these different people have all these different things where they say the basic idea is the more you serve others, the more you leave yourself behind to serve others, the more you will lift yourself up. And so this is the thing that we're trying to do. Now, one other thing, when we were talking about the iServe coin, we don't have a slide on there. I'm going to explain one more thing. Joshua said that by serving, you actually get the iServe coin, or the coin on the iPlay coin, which is on our system. The iPlay coin is basically where the kids can compile all these coins. They can use them in the app. If they don't want to use them in the app, they can save them. By saving them, it's almost like a savings account. So they're actually learning personal finances, but as they save them, they can actually convert them into scholarships for actual universities and trade schools, not digital. I mean, we actually send them a certificate, and they get a scholarship to whichever university they want to go to, as long as it's a legitimate university, college, trade school. We send that school the funds, and the kids get the education. And one thing to understand, we never send the money straight to the family or the kids, because then they have the tax liability. We send it straight to the university, so it's a straight shot, and there's no question with where the funding goes and such. Go ahead.
And I know our time's kind of getting away from us, so I do want to highlight one other big thing with this platform, and that is Debt-Free Millionaire. That is one of the other pieces of this that we have, where it's designed to basically teach entrepreneurship. And so this is a whole game that's been flushed out that essentially is designed about the idea of monopoly, but making it better. Similar to this idea of pursuit of happiness is the game of life, making it better. And that's what Debt-Free Millionaire is. And this is another game that Zach had a lot of fun creating and has had a ton playing with his kids. But essentially with this one game, we are now basically looking to work and partner with different businesses so they can actually choose a career, look at what it actually takes to be in a life of, say, a nurse, be what it looks like to be a miner, whether it looks like an environmentalist, and that idea of learning what the experience is, and then having the micro games all built in within that game, so that way they're still having that gamification. They're still learning that idea. So if you're thinking of that idea, career day, That's what this is in a game format. So then from their screen, they're sitting here and playing it. And now we've got, federal funding that's available for this, because it is basically career readiness is the whole idea of this platform. And by platform, I mean this one game in Xogos. That's one of many.
Debt Free Millionaire is an amazing game. A lot of kids like simulations these days. They like to be able to experience certain things that they never experienced before. This is actually a game where you go in and you pick your industry that you want to go into. You pick the career path. If you want to go through college, get a higher paying job, you actually get to see what jobs are available if you go into that industry or go for that degree. So this is all career readiness. Then you jump into a second portion, which is not just career readiness, it's also about personal finance. So kids actually get to set their own budgets. And then they jump into the game. And if you can see down in the corner here, it's actually this one of our careers. This is a programmer, works in an office. They walk around the office and they do 3 mini games, all having to do with programming or medical or construction. If you're in the medical field, you're going to be working in a hospital, so instead of an office. And you can do mini games that will teach you about being a doctor or a nurse. Construction, same thing, but for others. So one of the things that Joshua was just talking about was in this system, we actually have partners that we've created, these corporate sponsors that are basically building their own career in this game. Some of the ones, I can't mention names because none of them are under contract completely. We just started doing this, but we're in talks with real estate company, an organization down here in Kansas City, and also what was the other one? It was, scientists in a laboratory. And so the idea is that we would actually create a scientist's lab where the kids can walk through and experience all these different mini games when it comes to science and experience all these different things. So there's so many things that can come from this, but this is basically to, as Joshua was saying, help them with entrepreneurship. That is actually one of the things you can do in here. Buying a house, paying a mortgage, anything like that when it comes to personal finance or a career, you get to simulate the whole thing. And there's 2 ways of playing it. One is a 30-minute game, or one is a continual simulation that you just keep going to playing over time. Now, this is just one of our games. iServe volunteer program. That's actually one of our programs. We have actually right now 4 different games in our system. We are just on the brink because we just opened up this year. We have about around 130 members right now, paying members on our system, and they're quote unquote beta testing until the end of August, when the iServe will be finalized, and then come the end of Q4 is when the first scholarships go out. So we are on the brink of really exploding throughout the US.
And you can kind of see too on this next slide, as we're cycling through this, the different people that we have partnered with.
Okay.
And so when we're looking at the whole idea of these partners and everything like that, that we've already established that with, and then some of the awards that Historical Conquest has certainly won over the years. And this is just obviously 2 of them that Zach has highlighted here on the screen, but there is probably a dozen or so that we've gotten already with this organization. And so it's been really neat. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and when it comes to the awards, the 2018 is actually Historical Conquest. The 2024 is actually Xogos Gaming. So this is an organization, parents pick, that we sent the gaming system out to see what they say. But because this is the only award that we've ever gone out with when it comes to Xogos. Historical Conquest has, as Joshua was saying, dozens of them.
So, and I do appreciate everybody. Now, this last thing you can kind of see that's kind of fun, me and Zach, one of the neat things is we have our own business cards. That's a little bit different, where it's actual playable cards in the game itself. And so that's one of those things that's kind of neat. And so obviously I've had a little bit of fun with that myself, as I've got basically this idea of a poster I put up for people to come and find and come and see. And so as I travel, kids actually hunt me down because I was such a gamer. I made sure my ability was also very good.
Plus, people love collecting the cards because they're they're rare cards. They're not in the boxes, and the kids love being able to collect cards. So these ones they can actually put in the deck, and when they need to contact us, they pull us out, email us, put us back in the game. So we're like the only business card that never gets lost. The kids always have ours, and they might have like 4 or 5 of ours. So
True enough. Now, so thank you for your time. Do you guys have any questions though about this at all? Oh.
Thank you very much. I'm just so impressed by how dedicated you are.
Did you want this one?
Kids, okay, it's so important. My question is this. I understand the coins for serving. How do the coins turn into cash for college?
Did you hear that, Zach?
I did, yeah. So we actually have corporate sponsors who are actually funding that. So every quarter, and this is why we do it in quarters, I mentioned the Q4, all the money that's collected through our corporate sponsors actually go to a scholarship fund. They do this because it is straight to the student. So the students get, say there's a pot of, and this is how I explain it, not to get too much in the details, but say there's $10,000, just a round number, $10,000 that's available in the pot for that quarter. And say that there's 10 kids that all put in 10% of that pot, or 10% of the iPlay coins that they've converted. Well, then they get $1,000, so 10% of the $10,000 would go into their account. Over the years, now, being in high school, you're not be able to collect a lot of money, per se. Especially like right now, if you start off right now and you're nearing the end of your high school career, you wouldn't be able to collect that many because it's every quarter. And you're competing against all the other kids that are there. But if you start from elementary school and you start just collecting quarterly scholarships, you will actually get to see it in the Xogos Bank, which is on the Xogos platform, how much money you're actually collecting towards going to college. And the calculations are, it's not just you're going to have $1,000 by the time you go to college. No, we're talking about like, and I'm saying this conservatively, a college, a community college or a state school that you won't be able to, you won't have to get a student loan. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about enough funding to actually go without a student loan because you have worked hard on all these different things, whether it's gameplay, doing well in school, or getting off the screen and doing things that are actually good for you. And if I can mention, it's not just the volunteer, that's just one of our active programs. The next one is actually physical, that will come out next year. We're going to be building it as soon as we're done testing the iServe volunteer app. The next one's being out and doing physical things. The third thing is social. And then the last one is actually that we have planned is tutoring. So you get to actually tutor other students and collect coins by doing that as well.
That is so cool. Oh, this is working. Okay. That is so cool. Thank you, Josh. I'm curious, what is your wildest dream for the entrepreneurial like business success and future of Xogos Gaming? What's your dream?
Okay.
This is the only thing me and Zach do.
No, so my dream is actually to have kids to, one, like I was saying, I actually want them to go to school without having loans. I'm a fiscal type of person. I don't want people to have a huge amount of debt. I've had plenty of people that, myself included, except I got myself out of debt quite quickly because I used some of these things that we're putting in these games. But I've seen so many people get hurt because of the debt that they have. And if students can go to school without having to be in debt, great. If they could actually go into college actually knowing what they want to do. Oh, and with that, if they're going to college using, and this is the hope, this is, again, I can't prove anything because we haven't done it yet. The hope is that kids will actually go to college, if they're going to go to college or a trade school, and not blow the first year or two because it was given to them. They'll actually go and say, hey, you know what? I put the time in. This is my money. I'm actually going to sit down and engage myself in the learning and do well. I'm hoping that, as I was talking about the NAEPS report card, that we go from the lowest to the highest that we've ever been. And that's because kids are engaged. such as one of the big things that we want. I could go on forever, sorry, but one of the things that we really see is that kids will leave school and play this throughout the summer. So by the time they get back, they'll either be more advanced or at the same level, no learning gap because they left high school, because they left school to go off on summer break, and then all of a sudden they come back and they're like, reteach us everything you just taught us for the last year.
And that's the nice thing about this is by that they literally have skin in the game, you know, because they are playing something they enjoy.
Yeah, it's a.
Go ahead, your question.
I was just going to say that along the lines of what you're talking about, I'm a retired high school registrar, and I think one of the things kids struggle with is knowing what they want to study at the college level, knowing what they're good at the high school level and younger. So it seems to me some of the qualities of your system will help them kind of get that information before college, and maybe, again, like you said, they can start college more intentionally and more decisively. So I really like that aspect of your gaming.
Thank you.
Can I make
a question here?
Wait, before we get to the question,
Oh,
from what was just said, that's the hope. So my wife is actually a school counselor. She works at a public school that has like, I think it's like 30%. Well, it's 100% low income housing and free lunch and such like that. These kids, when I went there for a career readiness or a career day, most of the kids did not want to go to college. But when I mentioned what we were doing and that they had a chance to be able to earn their way to do it, and this is elementary school, nearly all of them said, yeah, I might try college. I'm like, yes, exactly. Because a lot of the kids, they don't want to get into debt. They know what that is nowadays. They see that there's a lot of disconnect between going to school and being able to have the ability to do it. They don't feel like they have the ability to do it. One of the other things to know is that my wife, being a school counselor, she's in charge of there's a program that all the kids have to go through these days, and it's for career readiness. And she starts teaching that, and she's a great teacher. Well, being a school counselor, she's a great teacher, but most of the kids just fall asleep. They do not engage with the information that's there. No one's ever gamified it. We're gamifying it. The information that they have and she's at the elementary school level, so it's not exactly close to high school and close to graduation, but that's where it really starts. If we can start them off having fun with looking towards that and exploring all different types of careers, then they're going to be 100% on board. And like you were saying, the idea is that we want to help them to know what they want to do when they jump into college. I think that's a great way of putting it, as you put it.
what was the other question we had here?
Go really close to your mouth.
I didn't really know much about gamification until our book club read one. It's like, this is fascinating. So I called my nephew, and they're big into gaming, and his wife, and she said, I would not be with my husband right now if it wasn't for gaming, because he has serious ADHD, high anxiety. So does their daughter, who's 10. Since she started doing gaming, her grades have gone up, her behavior's gotten better. So I'm just wondering, do you talk about that as far as one of the other pluses, the improvement in mental health that can happen?
You know, that is something, I mean, from my own family in that sense with my kids, they have certainly had some similar struggles. And that's that very idea of, you know, yes, we live in a beautiful town and have the outdoors, but even taking yesterday, when we had all that smoke in the air, you don't want to be outside, and you shouldn't be outside with all that smoke in the air, and just playing, you know, a simple game where we had code names. It was all about trying to discover, you know, what other people were thinking, or ink blots, which is like those black things, and like, oh, hey, what do you see here? But you're using that imagination and things like that, and you're coming at it from a different angle. So that's the beautiful thing about this type of learning, is that you don't have to say it's all, oh, look what I'm going to teach you now. It's, what are we learning together? What are we looking at from this? I mean, even these history games, this historical conquest, Toy will memorize his whole deck. And then all of a sudden for the next several years, oh yeah, there's this samurai. Oh yeah, there's this event. You just know these things, or you pull up a card and go, oh, I've never heard of this. I don't never heard of that either. Let's go look that up. And that's the neat thing about this, is that is what gamification is all about, is it stirs that drive and that excitement and puts it in their hands. So
Well,
thank you for that.
Can I say something to that? Okay, so what if you can go back to the slides, if you can show them the slide.
We see all 9 of your games with Historical Conquest, Panic Attack, I Serve, Shakespeare,
Right here.
Pride.
This one right here. This one's called Panic Attack. So as I said, my wife is a school counselor, and she has one kid that runs away every day. Like his mom will bring him to the school, and he will run away as soon as she's gone. And they can't keep him inside. And there's all these different things that are happening to all these different kids. And it's really hard to see what's happening with these kids and not try to do something. So my wife and I actually are working on this game. We're not programming it. We're not programmers. Never mind. I'm going around on that. But Panic Attack is actually, it's a game that's, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's like a game called Among Us. And Among Us is basically where you're running around a map, doing little mini games, and trying to find out who's the one killing each other. Well, we didn't like the fact that they were killing each other, so we created this off of a book that's actually out there called The Colored Monsters. And each monster is an emotion that kids are experiencing. So off of this concept, we're actually creating this game where kids can actually learn how to cope, how to like see what kind of issues they're going through, and how to overcome them. And this will actually help the kids to, we're hoping, to be able to manage their emotions and become stronger by learning it and such. So yeah, there are a lot of kids that are really struggling out there. And I hear what you're saying. It's really interesting how it's happening more and more. And to some extent, I would blame somewhat on the screens. And we're a tech company that we want to get kids off the screen. We want them to experience life. And that's what we're giving them. That's what we're trying to give them. We're trying to, yeah.
Another question here then.
Choosing the career choice gaming that you have, which I think is excellent. So let's say you have a little kid and he wants to be a veterinarian or a doctor, and he wants to invent new medications, etc. And so he works, get into college. And then he realizes he wants to work with microscopes and develop chemical substance. And then he realizes that he has no fine motor control. Do you have a way of testing a child like that? Okay, you want to work making medications, chemistry, biology. How do we test? Are you best selling the product? Are you best working with a microscope? I mean, how would we all have different abilities, physical abilities. Is there a game that you do where we can determine where they should be, for instance, in that company?
So one of the great things with technology these days is you can learn a lot about a player or a user by the things that they do. One thing to know, as that we're in the public schools, we actually have like 4 federal laws that we have to do to keep kids' information safe. So none of the information we ever collect would ever be sold to anyone. But the system that we are creating, now we don't have it up and running. It's more of a concept right now, is actually to help collect some of this data to be able to help out with whether it's helping them understand which job to go for, or it's just helping their parents or teachers understand what type of child this is and things that actually might help them. That's what we're hoping to do. With this information, we're hoping to gather it. Another thing to know is that we don't actually collect their personal data, so we don't know who these children are. We collect, this is the profile of that person, and we can actually help them through that. So we actually help them with understanding these things through the computer finding this out, but also when the student is playing Debt-Free Millionaire, one of the things that they're actually doing is they're actually able to experience all these different things, and they're able to learn about the different requirements that that's what the career readiness, there's a bill in Congress, there's the funding that comes through, it has certain parameters that you have to do. And that's one of the things, is that you have to have the student be able to know what the requirements are of each of these things. And so the student would actually, by going to the system, they'd actually know these things as they go through. Sorry, I know I'm a little long.
So it's not, so, I mean, to kind of answer your question, you're going to get a broad picture with the variety of games that we're trying to do. So it's hard to say exactly, to some degree, I think where you're asking, are they going to be, what part of a vet would be the best? The idea is just trying to get more information to them so they can hopefully make that choice with their adults and they'll turn it over. But this is obviously still growing. And so there's pieces of this, and then there's, as these things get started, there's a whole other wave of games that we plan as we get more subscribers to add into this too. But every single one of them has to be vetted because we have to be certified through the federal government, through different states. And every state has their own regulation too. So we are prepared for all of that stuff, having been in the homeschool world since 2011.
And this is actually why we sell individual accounts first as we're moving up into the public schools, because we are testing these things out in order to fulfill all those rules per the actual state.
All right, we have one final question.
Because every single state we're going to actually have one of our partners is the one that's
Last
certified.
question.
I don't have time to give you 10 things of what I think this is great, okay? So I'm gonna go to, because I've had experience in some of this stuff as a teacher and curriculum developer. One of my concerns is when schools and other people adopt programs, they adopt it based on the enthusiasm of someone. Again, I don't mean to put you down, okay, or anything like that, but the enthusiasm as well as that it's a silver bullet. And then later, people start analyzing it to find out the program isn't really delivering what it claims to do. And in addition to, I'm concerned about addiction and stuff. So I don't know if you could address those.
No, totally. If I could. So actually, there's actually a law that came into play last year that schools, in order for them to buy some of these systems, because there were so many junk programs, especially around COVID, that were being sent out, people didn't know if they actually worked. They just bought them and hoped that they actually worked. They actually have to be certified these days. So as of last year, we actually have to be certified. We have and as an educator, you know of Canvas, right? Okay. Canvas actually it was bought out by a company called Instructure, not to get into all the details, but they actually certify all these systems to be able to be used in school. So we will be tested by a third party to certify that we are actually, one, keeping the federal laws that have to be in place, and then the second one is that it's actually a program that could, again, depends on the student, could help your kids in that way. So yes, third parties are actually the way we are going.
Well, thank you very much for everybody coming out here.
One last.
One last, okay.
Embarrassed.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going anywhere either, so you're welcome to hang around, ask me other questions too, and I'll keep lingering, so.
Well, no surprise, my focus is on the I serve portion because I'm representing a nonprofit who needs volunteers for activities year round. And I'm just wondering, is this, how can we take advantage of that whole program?
So in that whole sense, we can certainly keep chatting and get that all registered and get you plugged in.
Yeah, it should be available around June 23rd, 24th, whatever that Monday is.
We need kids in August.
Yeah, no, we'll be able to fit right into that. So let's keep talking. And yes.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Carla. Thank you to the Boathouse. And perhaps we'll see you next week and weekly at the Grand Lodge. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, everyone.